Shalom. We greet you in the precious name of the Lord Jesus. You know, it's always a joy. It's something that we look forward to meeting with you on Choices. You become so close to us, so special, that if we miss 1 week, it's like something is missing out of our lives. And so we want you to know we love you and we appreciate you. And so we say thanks for being with us. We trust God that all is well with you and the family, that you're taking care of yourself, of your body, of your family, of your finance. You're not neglecting anything, but that you're taking care of life in general. Because, you know, in this life, there's so many changes. In this life, it don't remain one way all the time. When you look around, what is happening in our nation, in our personal life, in our career, in our marriage, you name it, there's so many changes that are taking place. But are we adapting to these changes? Do we know how to deal with them? Let me give you a personal example. Look at your life, for example. You stand in front of the mirror. 20 years ago, you were not like this. Your hair was black. Your beard was black. Now what happened? It's white. You don't sit down and move. You will have to know how to deal with it. My recommendation is that you either black it or you shave it. But you know, we have to look at all these changes that are taking place in our life. And we cannot sit down and move. We cannot sit down and say, no, I didn't expect this. I don't know how to deal with it. No, we have to live with it.
Amen.
Know how to deal with it. Life is not one way all the time. There's so many changes in life. And so we want to encourage you, know, this is Choices. We're not only interested in your spiritual growth, we are interested in the total man. Man is tripartite, spirit, soul, and body. And Choices is focused in these areas to help you. We want you to be the man that God expects you to be. And so stay with us. You're going to hear these men speaking personally of some of the changes that has happened in their lives and how they were able to deal with it. Choices will forever be with you. God bless you, and God continue to bless beautiful Guyana. Thank you, and be blessed.
You know, Reverend Singh, as you mentioned about shaving and so on, for that reason my head is bald. And I think we have another bald-headed man too also on the program. But on a more serious, he's identified himself. On a more serious note though, change is inevitable. The dynamic nature of life will see change taking place. And Reverend Singh has just alluded to that. The shape of your body, your size, how you look early, and that's personal. But change takes place in many dimensions. You have change in relationships, you have change, you have political changes, you have change in politics, you have change in economics. And so life is about change. And the thing about it also about change is that change could be for the better and it could be for the worse. And so one has to be very careful and to be aware of changes that may occur, or the possibility of changes, and be prepared for the change. In sociology, there's something called anomie, which means a state of normlessness. Some people, because they're not prepared for a certain situation, their lives go into an anomic state, which means that they become flustered, jittery, nervous, and even do strange things because they were not expecting changes. For example, I have purposed a long time ago that I will never walk away. You know, I'll never divorce my wife, and I think Bishop, you've been saying that too. I have said that, and so that is a preparation. And so if you find yourself in a situation where it comes to that, you have put that deep down in your psyche, so you prepared for that. So you've reflected on this matter, and therefore you're stable. And that is why some men proceed to kill. We talk about relationships, because this relationship is broken, they proceed to knife the woman to death, or the woman knife the man to death, and that kind of thing. Anomy is very present in the state of economics. You know what it is to be extremely rich today, and tomorrow you find that all is gone. So it's all about reflecting. It's all about collaborating to make sure that you still remain grounded, whether change is on the bad side. You have to be prepared, and that is a fundamental problem. Some people get vexed with life and vexed with God, but you have to understand that change is inevitable, and the whole idea of preparing for it is very important, because it will help you to stabilize. So you must reflect, you must collaborate, you have to align yourself with people who will help you in a case of adversity. And so today we want to continue to examine this whole subject of change. Gentlemen.
Bishop, I heard you earlier speaking to the subject of the kiosks, and it reminded me of my very first experience, and I would like to contribution to the discussion right there. I remember going to America. I've gone before, but when I went this time, they had all these kiosks, I think they are. They had them all set up right there, and you had to go to them. I stood up. It looked like for eternity, and I can't get this matter done. I don't know what to press. When I tried pressing, I'm not getting anything done. And I became confused. I became anxious. To a point, I even became kind of fearful. I felt as if I'm incompetent, and just because I was unable to adjust to the changes that had taken place before me. And then one of the agents saw my confusion and walked over to me and said, "You're having difficulties?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Give me your passport." And took the passport, turned it over to the data page. And before long, it was all through. I said, "Wow, that easy?" So the next time I went in, I guess what I did? I decided that I don't care how long it will take me. I will experiment, I will try. And by trying, I got through. I don't think we love changes as people, but because of being alive, change is necessary. There's nothing that is alive that does not change. And hence, we have to adopt. I would normally put it, you have to come to a place of compromise, a place where you're giving up a little of your comfort so that you will be able to adapt to the new environment. And in marriage, in your social life, in your academic life, in your emotional life, in your economic life, in all aspects, in your physical life, you heard Dr. Pastor Reverend Singh speak about. In all aspects of our life, we just have to make up our minds that change will come. And when it comes, I must adapt myself to it. Or else we will really struggle for a very long time.
You're talking about adapting to change, Reverend Sana. I believe one of the necessary things of change or about change is that it helps us to move on. Sometimes the past can hold us back, but moving on is a slow and steady process that should be nurtured rather than rushed. And so we learn from our experiences and we're able to make that necessary change. We're able to adapt. And those little changes that occur every day stimulate your progress and put you one step further from bad situations that you don't like. And you leave those situations behind. Your personal development should be continual and is a crucial part of moving on. So as we examine the whole notion of change, we must embrace it. We must pursue it because we were born for these things. We have the tenacity, we have the wherewithal, but we must embrace it with that positive change. And so implementing change in your life and kickstarting your personal development by investing in training and the like will help to make the past or see the past as a distant memory and help you to step into a career or a role that you always dreamed of. Let's embrace the future. Let's embrace change.
Dr. Hudson made this remark over and over in his introduction. Change is inevitable. And I believe we have heard that in each of the presenters, change is inevitable. As humans, could you imagine if we're 60 years now and you find that there's a human who's behaving like if he or she is 6 months old, if that's at all possible? In order to remain viable, in order for us to remain in touch, change is inevitable. Hear what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he sums up this whole question of change. And not just, he describes that change is necessary organizationally as well as personally. He said, and I quote, "We ain't what we ought to be. We ain't what we want to be. We ain't what we gonna be. But thank God, we ain't what we was," unquote. You know, this gentleman experienced change at every level. Sometimes you want to resist change. Sometimes you grow accustomed to the norm and you don't want to experience the dynamics of change. You set yourself to only do things in this particular way. You could find your life very, very miserable if you keep operating that way. We have to find ways to interact. And we understand the whole question. Could you imagine when I was growing up, for example, I was told, I heard this was the mantra in my home: do one thing at a time. By the time I started having children, a child said, "No, we are doing many things at the same time." And so if the human who was raised in the 50s and in the 60s, and you're thinking that there's only one thing at a time, these little ones say, "My heart is beating, I am seeing, I am hearing, I am tasting. Which one do you want me to do?" And so change. And people are multitasking in all kinds of ways. Change. A frightening change for me is what they call AI, artificial intelligence. I can't sufficiently speak to the topic, but the little that I have been trying to understand, life will not be as it used to be. But we have to understand that those realities. So change, whoever you are, is not just political and economic and social. Change is relational. And we're seeing all these flashpoints in our country and around the world, where around the world people pick up a gun and go to a mall, and just indiscriminately, what is happening? They'll start shooting. What's happening there? We have to think, we have to change the way how we perceive, even the way how we look at our children. I saw an advertisement the other day in social media, and from this advertisement, they seemed to be inviting people to a party of a difference. This is to have a nice time. But the method that they're going to deliver this was pretty frightening. So for us as adults, we're trying to figure out what's really going on. How now Chuck Colson asks, how now shall we live? So if you're trying to be impoverished to change, the world will leave you behind. So it's important for us to be able to, as the young people say, roll with the punches by the grace of God.
Bishop, I intend to grow older. I intend to grow older gracefully. I have a special forces buddy who lives in Texas. And I remember a conversation we had, and I was during training, and he told me that the 75 pounds rucksack that you're able to carry now for days over long distances, as you grow older, you'll find it more and more difficult to sustain it and to carry it for that length of time. He said what has to happen is that you must consider that while physically you become tired easier or quicker, and you would not be able to do some of the things that you did in your youthful years, consider using or start using your brain more than you depended on your physical strength. And that has left me, with an indelible impression that as we adapt to change, the inevitability of change requires that we consider how we can adapt without being disagreeable, without being frustrated, and without, considering that one is unable to do what one previously did in such manner. So for me personally, I have made the adoption, I've made the changes because I've recognized that some of the things that I held so strongly, not concerning my faith, but some of the things that I held so strongly, which were heavily reliant on my physical ability to do it. As I grew older, I cannot do it as I would want to do it. So there's a greater dependency now as I mature on the use of my cognitive skills so that I can still enjoy life. I can still be a part of life. I can still make a contribution to life in that regard.
They say once a man, twice a child. And let me show you something. A few minutes ago, I was trying with this laptop here. Let me tell you something. It's like if it raised me blood pressure. I called my granddaughter for help. She said, how much time I can do this thing for you? I show you how to do this. I say, all right. And I tell you, I did feel like I get so vexed. Look, but I'll show you something. I was at the Georgetown Hospital and taking some stitches out in my knee. And a doctor turned to me and asked me, he said, Millie, I said, yes, doc, hear you. How long now you married? And I tell something, it's only the women could tell you that thing. I said, man, it's been a long time now. Hear you. Tell me the secret. I said, listen something. I said, listen, you got to pray and ask God for tell you what to do. I say, because he said he don't got a long relationship with women. I say, well, you got to make up your mind. I married one who you think love you and you love them. He said, you know, you're right, you know. You're right. I said, man, in this life, there's got changes. And, you know, you got to take your time. Don't run and married, just married. Look for somebody who will love you and who you love. And, you know, he sat down and he listened. And he said, Millie, you're right. I got to change my lifestyle. I said, ask God to help you too. Well, I ain't see back at all. I ain't see back again.
Brother Millie, as we listening to you, transitioning from one state to another state is always difficult. That is change, you know.
Yeah.
Transitioning from one state to another state, it's always difficult. That young man, he has to learn how to transition. It's not always easy, but he has to learn how to transition from one state to another state. That is change. And the only constant in this world is change. So all of us, we have to learn how to transition from one state to another. I'll give you a quick example of me personally, transitioning from one country to another, Guyana to Europe, transitioning from being the big chef, the big boss, a position of importance, a job of importance, to being at home, doing nothing other than, well, I try to study. It's a new country, new language, new culture, new everything. So of course I immerse myself in studies so I can learn. But the transitioning, you spend 30-something years of your life in one culture, in one place, knowing everything, and you have to uproot that after 30-something years, transitioning from one state to another state. And the first year, it was very dark in between myself and wife, learning how to transition. It was by the grace of God, as you rightly said, Brother Millie, the help and assistance of men right here on this panel, speaking to me weekly, daily, monthly, encouraging me, don't give up, don't give up. So transitioning, as I said, I'll be quick. It has a whole lot of implications. Your mind has to change. You cannot look back to what it used to be. And that was one of my crimes. Looking back where you came from, how it used to be, and how I had it, that's going to be a problem. You have to change your mind. It was mentioned before, your mindset. You have to have persons around you who will support you and lift you up and encourage you. Learning how to transition from one state to another state, we cannot finish it on this program. But that's the first process of change, learning how to do it. Adopt your mind.
I guess you have to make up your mind to change because the old has gone and the new has come. That sounds like the ending of 2 Corinthians chapter 5:17, where the old is gone and the new is here. And I think we have to actually do that. You go into the market. I heard in our discussion before, you go into the market, I was there recently, and you find that prices are no longer the way you left them. Prices have changed. You really need a mindset to deal with it. You move around Guyana, it seems as if everything is changing. We have a construction boom and so all over. You really have to readjust yourself to changes. And no better example is what happens at home. Because as the children grow, as you and your spouse continue to interact, no one remains the same. You need the grace of God to be able to adjust yourself to the different changes that takes place.
You know, Solomon says in Ecclesiastes, I think it's 3 3:1, he says, there's a time for everything under the sun. And I think what he was speaking to is the whole notion of change, because he talks about a time to born, a time to die. And we know the scriptures. He says there's the time for everything under the sun. And so Solomon was actually saying life, it's about change. And what I've discovered is that the more you embrace and accept change, is the more intentionally you will change. So the whole thing is about accepting, because if you refuse to accept that changes are taking place, again you'll be in a quandary. Again, you will be in a state of anarchy, because you're not seeking to understand that this change has taken place. And so you're trying to beat back something that is already there and that has taken place. And you talk about the machine, Reverend Hassan. I remember the first time we had this ATM. I used to be afraid to go to the machine. And actually, my wife, I don't know, because women, they know good about money. However, my wife, she used to go to the machine. And Millie, don't be worried. You were not the first person where you were rebuked. My son, he held his head like this when I asked him to do one thing over and over again with the computer, the system. He held his head like this to say that was in your head. But you have to embrace it. So you think I stop calling him? Once I have an issue, I come, because I've embraced the whole notion that he has the skill set that I need. It's not that I'm not going to learn, but we still have to embrace the fact that, there are people out there who could help you, and so you collaborate and cooperate.
Well said as a father and as a man. You're speaking on behalf of all the men who now and again have to rely on the next generation for help. And pride prevents a lot of folk from breaking through, because they are not prepared to change and to yield. This life is very dynamic, and we don't need the sociologists to explain to us all the aspects of life. It's something that will not stop, and that is change. Be prepared to make that internal analysis and decision, and relook at how you engage time, people, situations. This is choices. You've exercised a choice to watch this. We'll see you next week. Be blessed.
We thank you for joining us on Choices today. Remember, you can join us at First Assembly, LNP Durban Street, Workmanville, Georgetown, Guyana, for any of our special services. I'm Celicia on behalf of the set, reminding you that your whole life is the sum of your choices. God bless you.